Ordinary Americans are still struggling to make ends meet, and the problem has been further exacerbated by corporations using the inflation narrative to price gouge consumers, even when their costs haven't been rising. Now, greedflation seems to be paying off for shareholders and corporate executives because the top 1% are sitting pretty. But look no further than the CEOs of the 7 largest publicly traded insurance companies who made a combined $335 million just last year. So let's do that. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at their CEOs, their companies, and how much money they made. So Joseph Zubretsky, who's the CEO of Molina, he made a whopping $180 million, followed by David Cordani, who's the head of Cigna, and raked in $37.1 million in a single year. Now, Karen Lynch, CEO of CVS Aetna, made $30.9 million. Bruce Broussard, who's the CEO of Humana, was paid handsomely as well at $30.6 million. In fact, if you look at this list, the lowest paid insurance CEO is poor Sarah London, CEO of Centene, who only made a measly $8.2 million. Now, how'd these fat cats make it so big? For starters, they spent billions of dollars on stock buybacks. The executives receive a massive portion of their compensation package through stocks. And if they can game the system and inflate the value of shares, they get paid a lot more. That explains why this practice has been so widespread over the years. In fact, it should be banned, but of course it's not. Now, 7 of the top health insurers spent a whopping, get a load of this, $141 billion on stock buybacks between 2007 and 2022. And to make matters worse, some of those companies get a huge portion of their money from us, the taxpayers. The 3 smallest of the 7 big for-profit insurers, Centene, Humana, and Molina, now get 80 to 90% or more of their revenue from taxpayers through the Medicare Advantage plans they operate and the state Medicaid programs they manage. Look, as we've shared with you all before, Medicare Advantage is privately run but publicly funded. A trait of privately run Medicare Advantage is basically overbilling the Medicare system and ripping off US taxpayers. Awesome. Meanwhile, according to a report from last year, over 100 million Americans, or a whopping 41% of adults in the country, have medical debt. In 2019 alone, before the pandemic, Americans owed a staggering $195 billion in medical bills. The very concept of medical debt is completely foreign to every other developed country, but our country is the exception because corruption is legal here. It's baked into our system. Health industry spending on federal lobbying rose 70% from 2000 to 2020. The industry as a whole spent $713.6 million lobbying federal policymakers in 2020 alone, compared to $358.2 million in 2000, which by the way was still way too high. Now, health industries include drug and device makers, providers like hospitals and physicians, insurers, and other payers and healthcare consultants. And these corporations, these corporations are directly opposing the will of the American people who, by the way, obviously support universal healthcare. That's something that we've also talked about repeatedly on this show because there have been many polls that have repeated the same results. For instance, a 2022 AP poll reveals that public satisfaction with the US healthcare system is remarkably low, with fewer than half of Americans saying it is generally handled well. Only 12% say it is handled extremely or very well. I mean, obviously it's not handled well. We spend more on healthcare than any other developed country with the worst results. About 2/3 of adults think it is the federal government's responsibility to make sure all Americans have healthcare coverage, with adults ages 18 to 49 more likely than those over 50 to hold that view. The percentage of people who believe healthcare coverage is a government responsibility has risen in recent years, ticking up from 57% in 2019 and 62% in 2017. There are so many business practices that the federal government has greenlit. Corporate stock buybacks is a perfect example. But in the very least, could the federal government maybe reconsider greenlighting private insurers using our taxpayer money through the Medicare system to essentially enrich themselves further through corporate stock buybacks? I mean, I really appreciate just that one small change. As if the price gouging we experience in the healthcare industry, as if the denials of coverage that we experience every time a procedure is not authorized by the insurance company that we're covered by, as if all of that isn't enough. All of those behaviors meant to maximize profits, not enough for them. They also have to rip off the Medicare system to essentially enrich themselves further. And while Republicans love to complain about how Medicare, it's just too costly, it might not be solvent in a few years, maybe they should consider the fact that private industry is overcharging the Medicare system through Medicare Advantage. Even Trump wanted to do something about that. Now, it didn't end up coming to fruition because of course, even when it comes to the right wing, when their corporate donors speak, they certainly listen. But the idea that American taxpayer money is being used on corporate stock buybacks by private healthcare executives, the fact that that's happening right now as we speak, and it's just unabated, unmitigated, no talk about it whatsoever from the federal government, including progressive lawmakers, that's infuriating. Something needs to be done about that. But of course, let's get distracted by all the cultural things that set us apart from each other. Let's fight each other, let's do that, it's great. Ordinary Americans, ordinary workers at each other's throats over their cultural differences. That's the perfect thing for us to focus on as we're all getting robbed. Love it. Just something to think about as you hear the reports in corporate media, as you see what the issues are according to our congressional lawmakers, what we should be focusing on. Ask yourselves, are they trying to pit you against your fellow American so you're not concerned or not paying attention to the robbery that's taking place? Because I think that's what's really going on here, but I don't know, I could be wrong.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.